Good morning and welcome to episode 8 of the Duval 22 podcast. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'm thrilled to be joined by Ryan Green, aka Hacker. You can catch him on his show Hacker After Dark on 1010XL 92.5 FM radio in Jacksonville. It's a familiar feeling, at least for me. I'm sure Hacker too, because last year we were breaking down Jaguars games for 1010XL, but now it's on the Duval 22 podcast here. But again, you can check out Hacker on all 1010XL platforms. Hacker, it's going to be talking to you again, breaking down the Jags game, especially Jags W. Excited to talk about Monday Night Football with you. But first, just how you doing? How's the season treated you so far?
Yeah, Gus, good to see you, man. Appreciate you having me on. And it's vastly different than when you and I were doing these sort of things last year.
Yeah.
Last year was rough when we were recapping Jaguar football. 4-1, man. I'm surprised. I mean, look, I thought Jacksonville would win, 8, maybe 9 games this year. But if you would have told me 4-1 a month and a half ago, I probably would not have believed you. It's been a crazy start to the season.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, honestly, is that like this is supposed to be the hardest part of Jacksonville's schedule. And now they do play two really good teams over the next 2 weeks in Seattle or against Seattle in week 6, and then against the Rams in London in week 7. And so potentially you could be 4-3 entering the bye. But I think everyone inside and outside of Jacksonville said if they're above 500 going into their week 9 bye week, into their week 8 bye week, then they should be feeling pretty good because the second half of the season softens up a little bit. Maybe not as much as we were expecting since the Colts actually look like a real franchise nowadays. But yeah, it's definitely a very, very good start. But again, we're breaking down the Jaguars' 31-28 Monday Night Football win over the Chiefs in Week 5. Just like, what was your first impression for the win, basically, or like your biggest takeaway? And I'm also curious to hear like what your thought process was like when the Chiefs went up 14-0, and if you thought that the Jags had a fighting chance to come back, or if you were like many fans and thought, okay, well, good night, see you guys next week.
Yeah, look, I mean, Liam Cohen, Gus, all off season long, and you were down there, man. What do you talk about? How the team is going to respond to adversity, right? That was a big topic because in years past, last year and for many years prior, I mean, you're down 14 nothing to Mahomes. Are you kidding me? It's over. And look, the Jaguars, not only were they down 14 nothing, they got the business from the officials on that interception. I mean, that is a game changing play. The officials on the Trevor Lawrence pick, horrific non call that ends up getting intercepted. Kansas City goes down and ties the game. There were many times on Monday night where Jacksonville could have reverted back to their old ways, but they kept battling. I mean, they just kept battling. 3rd and 7 after a couple of negative plays with a minute to go. Trevor over the top to BTJ down the sideline. Maybe his best throw, I won't say ever, but it's his best throw in a long time in a situation like that. Then they go down to get a delay of game. It's 3rd and 13 with, 38 seconds to go. Brian Thomas Jr. makes a play where he gets an interference call, which was absolutely interference. And then to cap it off, Trevor gets tripped by Makari, falls down, very similar to the Saints game. Remember the preseason game against the Saints?
Yeah.
Well, a month and a half ago, it was like the same thing. He fumbled that one. This one, he gets up and runs for a game winning touchdown. I'm watching this team, Gus, and I'm like, are these the Jacksonville Jaguars? Because they're doing stuff that, quite frankly, they haven't done in a long, long time. And I think it's almost entirely Liam Cohen, James Gladstone, the new guys they've brought in here, the new culture they've established. It's pretty exciting to be a Jaguar fan right now.
Absolutely. On the defensive side, I think it was really impressive how much the defense was able to limit the Chiefs after they did go up 14-0. Now they did allow what was a go-ahead touchdown by Kareem Hunt in the fourth quarter. And so there's been a couple of times already this year, like the Jake Browning drive in week 2 comes to mind, where Jacksonville's defense isn't really able to make the plays they need to in crunch time, but more often than not, they are able to make those plays. And one of those plays did happen on Monday night with Devin Lloyd's 99-yard return pick six, which was just the highlight of the season so far. Maybe not even just for Jacksonville, but like across every NFL team, that was an amazing play. But beyond like that last Kareem Hunt go ahead touchdown drive, I was really impressed by the Jaguars being able to hold firm because I thought once it was 14-0, like I thought there was a solid chance that the Jaguars would be able to scrape back and get enough points to make it competitive. But I also thought that the way that the Chiefs' offense looked, that they were going to be on pace to score over 30 points, maybe even over 40 points in this game. And so, obviously, hat tip to both sides, hat tip to all three phases. But to go back to the offense and specifically Trevor Lawrence, I think that the throw to Brian Thomas probably wasn't the best throw of his career, just because given his arm strength, he's made some pretty ludicrous passes. But I think you could certainly make the argument that it was the most clutch pass of his career. I think it's like pretty much that one, and then the touchdown to Marvin Jones in 2022 against the Ravens. It's like those two games really, as a whole, kind of stick out as the best of Trevor's career. And so I'm interested to hear more of your takes on Trevor Lawrence. Like it feels like that last game-winning touchdown was like just the epitome of the Trevor Lawrence experience, where it's a complete roller coaster ride, and you're saying, "Oh no, oh no," and then all of a sudden it's the greatest thing ever. And so, just what did you see from Trevor Lawrence, and how do you think it's like a sign of things to come going forward?
You know what I almost relate it to? It's like Brett Favre, right? Brett Favre, a Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks that ever played. But Packer fans knew at some point during the game he was going to throw a ridiculous interception. And you just kind of accepted that, right? I mean, you think about some of the ridiculous picks that Brett Favre threw in his career, but then he would have game-winning drives, won a Super Bowl. You know, he's again one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played. Now, I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence will be in Canton, Ohio one day, but I think what I've come to accept about Trevor is there's going to be an instance or two in a game where he crosses the line of scrimmage and throws the ball for no reason whatsoever, or he takes a crazy delay of game. And you're sitting there saying, what the heck are we doing? But in that same breath, he'll drive down for a game-winning score. I mean, that's just almost who Trevor Lawrence is at this point. You just have to accept the fact that one or two times he's going to do something ridiculous. But at least so far this year, he's also come back and done stuff that's been football miraculous. And last night was that with that crazy trip, get up, score to win the game. There again, there was a lot of instances last night that Trevor could have reverted back into a shell. You know, in the years past, Trevor throws a pick like that, and the offense goes to heck. That did not happen last night. Again, is that the Liam Cohen effect? Perhaps. Is that Trevor getting a little older, a little wiser, a little more experienced? Maybe as well. So I just think at this point you have to accept Trevor for who he is and who he's been through the first 5 games is a really interesting quarterback to watch and a quarterback that's 4-1 of one of the best teams in the National Football League right now.
Yeah, I love that stylistic comparison to Brett Favre because they're definitely both like two guys who are like aggressive to a fault sometimes. Like Trevor will certainly make a boneheaded play or two, and like they are boneheaded plays, but they're also like created out of him kind of like pressing or just like trying way too hard to like get a first down or to win the game or whatever the case may be. And so Brett Favre obviously had a little bit of that too, where he'll throw 3 touchdowns per game, but you can definitely count on one interception too. To me, I was like kind of blown away by the creation that Trevor Lawrence showed last night. I think that in week 4, we saw some development from him in terms of like dialing back the risk. He still had a boneheaded play or two, but like it wasn't backbreaking. And he kind of honestly turned into more of a game manager in week 4. And it was a game where the Jags generated 4 defensive turnovers, and they had a double-digit halftime lead. And so the Jaguars certainly want him to play like a game manager in that type of game script. But then you saw in week 5 against the Chiefs, like he wasn't just a game manager. He was back to his kind of like aggressive self and creating plays out of structure, especially with his legs. According to Next Gen Stats, Lawrence set a career high with 8 scrambles and 53 yards off of scrambles, and then he also had 2 rushing touchdowns. And so I feel like that's kind of what's been like separating him from like the very top tier of quarterbacks, and really not even necessarily him. Like that's what separates the top tier of quarterbacks of like Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen is their ability to create. And more often than not, they're able to create out of structure with their legs. And so I think that the majority of fans in Jacksonville were probably like hoping that Trevor would use his legs more than he did in the first month of the season. And obviously it paid off for them in the week 5 win. Again, like the creation that Trevor Lawrence displayed, being able to get buckets when the team needed it in crunch time. I was very, very impressed. I think it was certainly not the cleanest game of Lawrence's career, but I think you can make the argument that it was the best game of his career. And at the very least, it was pretty easily the best game that he's played since 2022. Before we move to the defensive side of the ball, I'm just curious if you have any other notes on anyone else on the offense. It was nice to see Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas both making huge catches, even if they didn't necessarily fill up the stat sheet. Brenton Strange left the game, I believe, in the first half with, I think, a shoulder injury. So that'll be something to monitor going forward. Any other notes from the offensive side of the ball on Monday, Hacker?
Yeah, the fact that, BTJ and Hunter combined for 7 grabs for, what was it, 140 yards, I believe. That's certainly an improvement. Hopefully that can continue to grow. Boy, the throw was outstanding, but it was a great catch by Brian Thomas Jr. in the fourth quarter there on the sideline. And then the offensive line, Anton Harrison leaves the game for a little bit. Edoga comes in. They don't miss a beat. Hainsey leaves the game. In comes rookie Jonah Monheim and does a good job in the fourth quarter. Again, the starting offensive line last year here in Jacksonville, Gus, was awful. But now they've played 8 guys. 8 guys have played legitimate snaps already on this O line, and they're doing a good job. Again, is that the Liam Cohen effect? Is that the new coaching staff? Yeah, probably. But I love the additions of Makari, the drafting of Monheim. We haven't even seen Wyatt Milam yet, who people were really excited about. We've seen Edoga, Monheim, and Cole Van Lannon come in off the bench and contribute when needed. And I love the fact that this offensive line is able to do that because obviously more injuries will come. You want to monitor Strange and Hainsey, particularly because this is a short week. It's crazy. I mean, we're in the locker room tomorrow. Seattle comes in on Sunday, so it's a really quick turnaround, and you definitely need to monitor about Strange and Hainsey's availability for Sunday.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that note about Hainsey slash Monheim because Monheim did play very well on Trevor Lawrence's 33-yarder to Brian Thomas on the last drive. I mean, Anton Harrison had a phenomenal block on the right side, but Jonah Monheim also did a good job of kind of locking up Chris Jones, and I feel like Chris Jones was not really a factor for much of the game. So credit, he is on kind of the back half of his career for sure, but credit to the Jaguars' interior, especially not just in this game, but for the whole season.
Chris Jones is getting the business this morning. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen online. ESPN did an entire segment on it. That if you go watch the game-winning touchdown from Trevor, boy, if you're a Chiefs fan, like I get Chris Jones is probably gonna be in Canton, Ohio one day, and he's one of the best defensive players in the league and one of the best to ever wear a Kansas City Chief uniform. What is he doing on that play? That was bad on
Yeah.
Chris Jones's part, and he's gonna have to answer for that. That was not a good look.
Yeah, if you missed it on Lawrence's game-winning touchdown run, once Lawrence hit the ground, Jones pretty much stood straight up and just didn't move after that. Just had no interest in playing through the whistle, basically. And so, definitely a tough look for him, but it's a good look again for the Jaguars' interior offensive line. I think that that's been the most pleasant surprise or the most impressive part, or whatever you want to call it, of the Jaguars this season so far. We'll talk about Devin Lloyd and Anthony Campanile in the defensive turnovers in a second, but I think we could have somewhat expected Jacksonville's turnovers numbers to regress in a positive way from last season, and could have expected Campanile to put his guys in better positions to succeed than Ryan Nielsen did last year. And so I don't think, even considering like what Liam Cohen did with the Buccaneers rushing attack last season, I don't think anyone could have predicted that Jacksonville's interior offensive line especially would be playing as well as they are right now. So hat tip to them. But to move to the defensive side of the ball, again, highlight of the play, highlight of the year so far for Jacksonville is Devin Lloyd's 99-yard return touchdown. It was a mugged up look where both Devin Lloyd and I believe it was Foye Oluokun were right over the center. And so they were showing a blitz, and then both of them dropped out at the snap. And it looks like Mahomes just literally never saw Devin Lloyd. And so credit not just to Lloyd for making a great play, but also for Campanile for scheming it up and kind of helping to create that takeaway. Just talk about Lloyd, like what you've seen from him this season, what you saw from him on Monday. Like, have you ever seen a player that was like kind of sort of on the fringe entering the season? Because the Jags were giving Ventrell Miller a good amount of reps at linebacker, kind of like subbing in and out with Devin Lloyd. And now at this point, like he's genuinely in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year.
I want to preface this by saying this about Devin Lloyd. I've always been a Devin Lloyd fan. There are some guys in the Jaguar locker room that you just enjoy talking to. And I've always enjoyed talking to Devin Lloyd. He's always available. He's very cool about talking with me and giving thoughtful answers. And as a member of the media, I really appreciate that, as I'm sure you do. Devin Lloyd is just a good dude. And when they didn't pick up his fifth year option, I mean, I understood it because obviously this regime didn't draft him. And there have been some issues with Devin Lloyd. And let's be honest, he had not been great here. He has been sensational in 2025. And I don't know if I'm overstating this, Gus. I'm going to talk about this on my show this week on 1010XL. In the 30 plus year history of the Jaguar franchise, have we seen a bigger difference in a player from one year to the next than Devin Lloyd 2024 compared to Devin Lloyd 2025? If Defensive Player of the Year in the National Football League were voted on today, I think Devin Lloyd might win Defensive Player of the Year. And it's a guy that a month and a half ago, Jaguar fans were probably happy that he was going to be gone after this year and did not get it was not starting any longer. Because you, like you said, with Ventrell Miller. So the Devin Lloyd thing is crazy to me, the turnaround. Campanile's scheme is a big reason why, and he's just playing out of his mind. And I'm very, very happy for him. I've always been a big Devin Lloyd fan.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I certainly cannot think of an example of someone improving this much from year to year. I will say that I think Devin Lloyd was a very good run defender last year, and even this year he is kind of like hitting holes and pressing up to the line of scrimmage at kind of like a different speed than he was last year, but he was still effective against the run. He's been like a decent situational blitzer throughout his career, but I think really the improvement is coming in pass coverage. I mean, obviously he does lead the NFL with 4 interceptions this season. He's actually has the most interceptions in a season by a linebacker in Jaguars history, and it's only been 5 games. And so he's got 4 interceptions, which is a credit to his coverage skills and his improvement there. Because in the past, like that was the reason that Ventrell Miller was mixing in with him, is that I think the Jaguars thought that Ventrell was like a little bit better at scanning the field, was playing a little bit faster and kind of quicker to react and adapt to stuff, and also just had like a little bit better lateral movement ability out in space. But like the transition from Lloyd from 2024 to 2025, specifically in coverage, has just been incredible. And like the 4 interceptions have all been great. Like I literally, at least, well, there was the one like that was kind of a tip drill to McCaffrey against San Francisco last week, but all 3 of the other interceptions was like Lloyd baiting the quarterback and stepping into a passing window. So it was truly 3 great interceptions and not just like a bunch of flukiness, like ball getting tipped up in the air and stuff like that. But then even beyond his interceptions, like there's multiple reps on tape each week where like Devin Lloyd is getting to like the appropriate spot in zone coverages. He's reading the quarterback's eyes and taking away passing windows. It hasn't just been the interceptions on a down-to-down basis. Devin Lloyd has been playing incredibly, and so is Fred Warner, honestly. And so I feel like that's where the defensive player of the year conversation is right now. If the season did end this week, I think it would be between those 2 linebackers. Now, Hacker, the linebacker play has been great. We haven't really seen a lot of flash plays from Foye Oluokun since the season opener, but that position's been playing really well. The defensive line has been playing pretty well, especially considering Trayvon Walker did not suit up for Monday Night Football after getting wrist surgery last Monday. But my question for you is, do you think that the Jaguars have a Tyson Campbell problem? Because it feels like he's been getting dusted at least once in every game, and like the problem is that like it's not he's getting dusted and like allowing like a 7 yard slant. Like he's allowed, it feels like a 30+ yard completion in each game so far this season. And so, what are your thoughts on Campbell and really the entire secondary for the Jaguars?
The thing about Campbell is, yeah, I mean, there were a couple instances. The one on Monday night, I mean, Mahomes got crushed on that play. He underthrew the ball, and Thornton came back to get it. I mean, I don't know if how much I'm going to put on Tyson on that. But when you say Tyson Campbell, yeah, is he playing the way I thought he was going to play? No, but they won the Texan game because of Tyson Campbell. If he doesn't strip that ball out of Nico Collins' hands, Nico Collins falls down. The Texans run the clock down to a minute, kick a field goal, and probably beat Jacksonville. You think back to Week 1, Ted McMillan, in the bomb that Bryce Young threw. Campbell was right there on fourth down to separate McMillan from the ball. I mean, Campbell, again, only 5 games in, has had some bright spots. He's had some bad plays, no doubt, but he's had some bright spots. So I'll give him a little bit of a pass. I like what he's doing on run defense as well. There were a couple instances last night where he laid the lumber to a couple of Chief players, which I like the physicality. What do you say about Jordan Lewis? I mean, truthfully, Gus, I knew who he was in Dallas. Was I having confetti rain down when the Jaguars signed Jordan Lewis on the first day of free agency? No. He's been sensational. Eric Murray is what I thought he would be. He's not going to be an all pro, but he's an upgrade over Andre Cisco because he's not going to blow coverages. He's not going to let guys get by him. He's just a solid football player. When James Gladstone talked about raising the floor of the roster, that's kind of what he was talking about. Guys like Eric Murray. He's been everything I hoped he would be. I think Dewey Wingard has had some nice moments. And then Travis Hunter, I thought played well on defense against Kansas City. There was that one instance where he was on Kelsey on a key third down in the first quarter. I like what Travis Hunter did out there. I'm curious why Jarian Jones isn't getting more playing time. Maybe that says more about Monteric Brown than it does Jarian Jones. I thought Monteric Brown had some nice plays as well. So I know I just rambled there a little bit, but the secondary in general, I'm okay with. I think there's certainly room for improvement, but they're playing well enough to win. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for them is like not just at the safety position, but in the secondary and really every level of the defense. The Jags have done a much better job this season compared to last of not missing tackles. And it did pop up a little bit last night. I think Cohen said that like he thought it was like maybe just because of how big the game was. It was a primetime matchup at home against a great opponent. And so maybe guys were playing like a little bit too hard and just like kind of pressing a little bit and literally playing too fast. And so fortunately, like it got cleaned up a little bit in the second half. But Monteric Brown certainly had a great game. He's got a lot of fans inside of the building, and I think you kind of saw why last night. He had a huge pass breakup over the middle of the field in the second half against Mahomes. And then to go back to Tyson real quick, like I agree with you where like even if he has let up a couple big plays, I would pin the one to Thornton on him because like even though Mahomes got hit and it was an underthrown ball, like the reason that Tyson never turned his head around is because he kind of got burned by Thornton, and so he was like just sprinting to catch up and was like, let me try to stop a touchdown as best as I can, and then just again, like wasn't turning his head around, didn't see that the ball was underthrown. But as you said, like he has not only like good plays to somewhat balance out the bad plays, but all of his good plays have come after his bad plays. In week 1, he allowed big catch to Ted McMillan, but then he had an even bigger pass break against him in the end zone. In week 2, he allowed a big touchdown to T. Higgins, but then he had 2 huge pass breakups against Higgins in the fourth quarter. He allowed a touchdown to Nico Collins in week 3, but then he had the forced fumble later in the game. And then last night he had the busted coverage against Tyquan Thornton, but then he made a couple of other really big plays later in the game. And so when you're talking about like Coach Cohen talking about guys battling through adversity, obviously the team has done it at a couple of different points this season, including last night. But Tyson Campbell specifically, I feel like has been kind of the epitome of that, where even though like we would like to see less negative plays from him, but the fact that he's continuing to bounce back and make positive plays is very much a good sign. So I get that's really all the questions I had for you, Hacker. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on the defensive side of the ball before we get out of here.
No, and not really on the defense. I just think it's important. I'm sure you've talked about this in weeks past, but I mean, you think about the last 3 games for the Jaguars. The Texans had won 9 out of 10 in Jacksonville, and Jacksonville did something about that. The Jaguars had lost 11 out of their last 12 true road games and had only won 4 games ever in the Pacific time zone. and they go out to San Francisco and they do something about that. Now they beat Kansas City for the first time since 2009. November 8th, 2009. I don't know where you were in life. I was 26 years old. I'm going to turn 42 at the end of the month. That's how long it's been since Jacksonville beat Kansas City, and that streak is now put to bed. Look, 4-1. You're only 5 games in. I don't want to jump too far ahead of the story here, but something special has happened the last 3 weeks, man, and I hope Jaguar fans are really enjoying it.
Absolutely. That's a good way to end it. Hacker, really appreciate your time. It was good to chop it up with you again. You can catch Hacker on his show, Hacker After Dark, on 1010XL, 92.5 FM radio, 1010XL's social media platforms, YouTube, etc., etc. Go give Hacker a listen and a follow. Thank you guys for watching and listening. I'll be back on, I believe, Friday, maybe on Thursday, to preview Jaguars versus Seahawks. I apologize for not getting out a preview pod last week. I reached out to about 5 different Chiefs people, and no one was able to do a pod with me. But I do already have someone lined up for this week. So stay tuned. There will be a Seahawks Jaguars preview in your podcast feed later this week. And so until next time, thanks again, everyone. Thanks again, Hacker. Adios.